So about 2 years ago, I had a problem with my MacBook Pro. One day, the trackpad just stopped working. So I made an appointment for the Genius Bar and went to the Grove here in Los Angeles. The guy looked at it and told me that the battery was consumed. That meant that as it got old and was used up, it expanded. And as it expanded, it ruined the trackpad. Now, I was later told by Apple that they should have offered to replace the trackpad for free, but they didn't. The guy told me, well, you can just use a mouse. We can take the battery out, or you can replace the battery. If they took the battery out, since the battery was pushing up because it was expanded, you know, theoretically it should not be pushing up and the trackpad should work. So I'd replaced the battery a few times in that particular computer, and I thought, I'm tired of buying batteries, and I'll just use a mouse or, plug in the computer. I thought, I'm not going to pay for another battery. I'm just tired of paying for batteries. So they took the battery out. I took it home that night, tried the computer, and discovered that, well, first of all, the trackpad did not work, even without the battery, not in it. But also I discovered I did not have Wi-Fi. Or I couldn't connect to the internet, through Wi-Fi. So I had Wi-Fi before I went into the store. I came home and I had a broken trackpad and now no Wi-Fi. So I made an appointment for another Apple store to go to Century City. I think the Grove just had a lot of appointments, and so I took it to Century City, spoke to someone, told them what happened, and they said, well, there's a problem with the airport. And I said, well, there wasn't when I took it in. I would have known if I had a problem with the internet, that actually would have been a bigger issue for me than not using the trackpad, because I could use a mouse. But, without Wi-Fi, what could I do if I couldn't use the internet? I'm on the internet all the time. Well, Apple just dug in. I ended up going to a couple of Apple stores. I mean, I went to Century City a couple of times, went to Santa Monica, spoke to a manager who was pretty much worthless, Eric Kinder. Um, that name will return. So I filed a complaint with the Better Business Bureau and said, look, when I took this in, it was the internet was fine, and when I came home, I had no Wi-Fi, and the trackpad was broken. So Apple pretty much said whatever to the Better Business Bureau. They said, it's beyond warranty. It's an old computer. And what they said to me in the store a few times was, why don't you just buy a new one? It's an old computer. Just buy a new one. Sorry if something went wrong when but just buy a new one. Well, at that point, I decided to write to Tim Cook. I had had an issue in the past with an iPod, and I wrote to Steve Jobs, and I'm going to make a separate video about that, and I'll tell you about that. So I thought I'll give it a try. I'll write to Tim Cook and see if his office will do anything. So I wrote my letter, and basically Tim Cook was worthless. He bounced it back to the Century City store. Those are the people I was complaining about. So, bouncing the complaint back to the people I had complained about obviously wasn't going to take things very far. So I went in one last time and spoke to Eric at the Century City store, and he kept saying, oh, that's a tough one. I don't know. I can't figure this out. I don't know what we're going to do. So, he said at one point they might be willing to, replace the logic board, but then there might be something else, or, and then he kind of waffled later. He talked about, or he said, well, we could fix airport, but then, and I think the more times they opened the computer, each time I brought it in, I was starting to, wonder if other things were happening, like a piece of the spine fell out. And at any rate, at this point, I took it to, so he said maybe they would fix airport, but if not, I'd have to pay for it. And that was about roughly $1,600, I think, 1,300, 1,600, something like that. So I decided to take it to authorized Apple reseller, Computech, here in LA also, to see what they thought, just to get a second opinion. And as I suspected, Apple wanted to fix everything. It's like you go to the car dealership, they want to, with a car that isn't brand new, they want to fix everything or sell you a new car. So Apple had kind of like an all or nothing kind of approach. Either you fix the whole computer and do everything, or else we can't help you out. So I figured, but Computech, maybe they could do something. And indeed, they said, yes, we could do part of it. And so I thought, well, let me go back to Apple and see if they'll pay for it at that reduced rate, and then maybe we'll be okay. Well, again, Apple and Eric, did not agree to that. So I wrote Apple and said, well, I'm sorry you can't figure out the solution, but I can. I've achieved clarity, and I'm going to take it to small claims court. And in California, before you do that, you have to send a demand letter for payment. So I filled out the demand letter and basically said, send me $5,000, which was triple damages for the $1,500, 1,600 roughly for the repair, plus triple damages. Um, so Apple ignored that, didn't do anything. So I filed in small claims court. And to make a long story short, I thought it was going my way that day. The judge, well, the guy from Apple, Eric, pretty much ended up running out of the courtroom. The judge looked at him at one point and he said, he held up the battery and he said, "Do you tell people that it's going to expand and damage the computer when you sell them the computer?" And Eric said, "Well, that's all lithium batteries do that." And anyway, he just looked at him at one point and said, "You call that good customer service?" When I explained that I brought it in with one issue and came home with another, and that they just weren't willing to budge. Um, I didn't find out that day, but I got a letter in the mail several weeks later. Actually, I found it from Apple. I got an email from Apple. I was wondering what had happened. Got an email from Apple saying, or a call, letter, I forget what it was. Apple contacted me and said, "Greg, we just found out about the judgment and we want to figure out how to send you the money." So I won. It was $1,680, the judgment, and I was very proud of myself. It was a matter of principle. You know, Apple just did not want to pay or do anything. I know that, it was a matter of principle. It felt, as I told friends, I said, it felt 10 times better than the money because, it was just, they just weren't going to do a damn thing. So, and it was very disappointing that that was Apple's approach, that they just would not. I pointed out in the trial also that, or in the courtroom, that there were no notes about the damaged airport. They claimed they had run a diagnostic showing it was damaged when I first brought it in, but they didn't tell me. And I said, well, that was a repair opportunity or a service opportunity. They could have said, hey, did you know your Wi-Fi is not working? Um, and let alone, not offering to replace the um, trackpad for free as I think they should have. I also told the judge, I said, I think this, if enough people knew, this would be a class action lawsuit, this sort of thing, because Apple's had plenty of class action lawsuits over things in the past. And the way that I said it in the court papers was that, Apple admitted negligence but refused to mitigate damages. And I think because they admitted that the battery damaged the computer, um, and God only knows what else happened when they took in the back room and kept opening it up, and it was out of my sight the whole time, and things kept going wrong. So, and the judge, agreed. And as I say, he just looked at Apple and said, "You call that good customer service?" So my advice is, if you experience bad customer service or any big company, you may think you don't have a chance or there's nothing you can do. Um, but after the Better Business Bureau complained and writing to the chairman and everything, take them to small claims court. Um, it's a third party, will listen to the claim, and if you admit negligence, as Apple did, pretty much of the case, or or that there was damage to the computer and don't want to do anything about it, you're going to have a problem. So I won, and you will too.